Jessica and I had been married for 8 years. We met in Denver, Colorado, when I was working my first real job after college, and she was waitressing at a local cafe while finishing up her degree. I still remember the first time I saw her, confident, sharp, and effortlessly beautiful. She had this way of making everyone around her feel seen, like they mattered. I couldn't believe my luck when she agreed to go out with me, let alone when we got married 3 years later. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but it was solid, or so I thought. We had the usual fights about chores or money, but we always found a way to move forward. Jessica was the planner, always full of ideas for how we could better ourselves, whether it was eating healthier, traveling more, or tackling fitness goals together. I loved that about her. She pushed me to be better, and I thought I did the same for her. About 6 months ago, Jessica brought up the idea of switching gyms. We'd been going to a small, no-frills place near our house for years, but she said she wanted something more professional. She found this upscale gym downtown that had glowing reviews online. They've got everything: saunas, yoga classes, even a juice bar, she said, her eyes lighting up. She was especially excited about their personal training program, claiming it would take our workouts to the next level. I wasn't exactly sold, but Jessica was insistent. When we started going, I had to admit the place was impressive. The equipment was brand new, the locker rooms were spotless, and the staff was friendly. That's where we met Ryan, one of the gym's top trainers. Ryan was one of those guys you couldn't help but notice: tall, muscular, and ridiculously good-looking. He had this confident swagger and a way of making you feel like you were his favorite client. Jessica seemed to hit it off with him immediately. During our first session, she asked him question after question about nutrition, stretching, and strength training. She laughed at his jokes, complimented his techniques, and seemed genuinely interested in everything he said. I didn't think much of it at the time. After all, this was her idea, and she was just enthusiastic about the program, or so I told myself. But over the next few weeks, things started to change. Jessica began putting extra effort into her appearance, especially when we were heading to the gym. She'd spend 20 minutes picking out her workout clothes, choosing leggings and sports bras that hugged her in all the right places. She'd fix her hair and even put on a bit of makeup, something she never used to do for workouts. I joked about it one morning, saying, "Who are you trying to impress?" She laughed it off, saying, "I just want to feel good about myself." At the gym, I started noticing how much time she spent around Ryan. She'd ask for his help with exercises I knew she already knew how to do. She'd linger after our sessions, saying she wanted to get a few extra tips. There were times I'd be finishing a set, and I'd look up to see her laughing with Ryan, standing closer than I was comfortable with. Then there was her phone. Jessica had always been an open book when it came to her messages or calls. But now, she was suddenly protective of it. One night, I noticed her smiling at her screen, her fingers moving quickly as she typed. "What's so funny?" I asked, leaning over to see. She tilted the screen away and said, "Oh, just a meme from a friend at work." Her voice was light, but there was something about the way she locked the phone immediately after that didn't sit right with me. It wasn't just the phone. She started taking calls in another room or lowering her voice when I walked in. One night, I overheard her laughing softly while talking to someone. When I asked who it was, she said, "Just Sarah from work," and quickly changed the subject. The final straw came one evening at the gym. We were wrapping up our session, and I saw Jessica and Ryan standing by the squat rack. She was laughing at something he said, her hand lightly brushing his arm. It was such a small gesture, but it felt way too intimate. My stomach turned as I watched them, a feeling I couldn't shake even after we left. That night, as we lay in bed, I couldn't stop replaying all the little moments in my head. The lingering looks, the laughter, the way she brushed off my questions. It all started to form a picture I didn't want to see. For the first time in our marriage, I started to suspect that Jessica might be hiding something from me. I tried to tell myself I was imagining things, that I was being insecure. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. After weeks of feeling uneasy, I finally decided I couldn't ignore it anymore. I needed to talk to Jessica, even if it meant confronting her about something I wasn't sure I could prove. It wasn't easy for me. I'm not the type to jump to conclusions or start a fight without reason. But things have been eating at me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One night after a quiet dinner, I took a deep breath and said, "I've been thinking. I don't like how much time you're spending with Ryan at the gym. It just feels a little too close, you know?" Jessica paused, fork halfway to her mouth. Her eyes flickered for a second, but she quickly covered it up with a smile. "What are you talking about? Ryan's just a trainer. You know, he's just doing his job." I try to keep my voice steady. "It's not just that. It's the way you're acting. You've been spending so much time with him lately, and it's like he's all you talk about. I just don't feel right about it." She set her fork down, looking a little annoyed. "Come on. This is what I've wanted, this level of focus on my fitness. Ryan's been helping me get into shape, and I don't see the problem. You're just being paranoid." I hated that word. Paranoid. It made me feel like I was overreacting, but deep down, I knew my gut was telling me something wasn't right. "I don't know, Jess. Maybe we should switch gyms. Or at least switch trainers. You know, just to change things up a little." Her response was quick and defensive. "Why would we switch gyms? We just joined, and you're barely going as it is. I'm the one getting results, so I don't see the need to change anything." It was clear I wasn't going to win this argument. Her voice had a certain edge to it now, something I hadn't heard before. I tried to stay calm, but I could feel the frustration creeping up. "I'm not saying we have to quit, but maybe we could find someone else to train with? I don't know. I'm just not comfortable with the way things are going." She shrugged. "Ryan's professional. I trust him. You're the one who's making this into something it's not." I wanted to argue, to keep pushing, but something inside me told me to back off for the moment. I didn't want to cause a scene, especially not over something I couldn't prove. I decided to drop it, but I didn't forget. A few days later, Jessica came home from work and casually mentioned she'd signed up for individual sessions with Ryan. He said I could benefit from more one-on-one training. "It'll help me hit my goals faster. And since we're members, I got a deal." My stomach dropped when I heard it. Individual sessions. She hadn't even asked me about it, and she'd already made the decision. I tried to hide my reaction. "What do you mean, individual sessions? I thought we were going to work out together." She gave me a distracted look as she unpacked her gym bag. "Yeah, well, this is different. Ryan said I could use the extra focus. And it's not like I'm doing anything crazy. It's just some more help with my form and conditioning. It'll be good for me. Trust me." I didn't trust her. "What about us?" I asked, my voice a little sharper than I intended. "We were supposed to be doing this together." She sighed, clearly annoyed now. "I'm doing this for me, okay? It's not all about you. If you don't want to come, then don't. I'm going." That stung. It wasn't just that she'd signed up for private sessions without asking me. It was the way she dismissed my feelings. I had never asked her not to work on herself. But the secrecy, the way she'd slipped into this routine without even considering how it made me feel, it was all adding up in ways I couldn't ignore. The following week, things got worse. Jessica started leaving the house earlier in the mornings, slipping out for her private sessions with Ryan before work. On the days she didn't leave early, she would tell me that her sessions ran over and that she was staying late to stretch or cool down. Sometimes she'd come home with a smile on her face, all energized and glowing, like she'd just had the best workout of her life. Other times, she'd be strangely quiet, lost in thought, her eyes avoiding mine. Then came the coffee shop incident. I came home late one evening after a meeting, and Jessica was sitting at the kitchen table, texting on her phone. When she saw me walk in, she quickly turned the screen away from me, but I saw enough to notice she was messaging Ryan. "Who was that?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Oh, just Ryan," she said, her voice too light. "He asked me if I wanted to grab a coffee after my session. We were talking about nutrition plans." My stomach churned. I didn't like the sound of that. A coffee? With Ryan? She gave me a strange look, like I was being unreasonable. "What's the big deal? He's a professional. We were just talking about fitness stuff. Relax." But it wasn't just fitness stuff, was it? I didn't want to come off as controlling, but something about the way she said it, so casual, so normal, made my skin crawl. Days passed, and her sessions with Ryan became a routine I could almost set my watch to. She would come home from the gym late in the afternoon, claiming she stayed longer for a one-on-one drill or extra help with conditioning. I started to notice that she'd smell faintly of cologne after those sessions, and it wasn't her usual perfume. I knew I had to do something. She was shutting me out, and I was beginning to feel like I was losing her. It had been a few weeks since Jessica's individual session started, and the more I watched her with Ryan, the more uneasy I became. She was distant, colder. She'd come home late from the gym, her phone always glued to her hand, and her demeanor had changed. There was a new energy about her, like she had a secret. I hated feeling like this, like I was losing her and didn't even know why. Then one evening, I noticed something different. Jessica had mentioned her session with Ryan was going to run late, but something about the way she said it felt off. She was too eager, almost in a hurry to leave. "I'm meeting Ryan for some extra work on my squats tonight," she said, barely looking up from her phone. "It's a special thing he's helping me with. You should just relax tonight." I didn't respond, but I kept watching her. The way she grabbed her gym bag and rushed out the door made something click in my head. She'd never been this quick to leave before. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't just sit around and keep guessing. If I was going to find out the truth, I had to see for myself. That night after Jessica left, I grabbed my keys and got in the car. I didn't even think twice. I drove downtown to the gym, trying to calm my racing thoughts. Part of me hoped I was being paranoid. Maybe I was overthinking everything. But I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was wrong, something I needed to see with my own eyes. When I arrived at the gym, it was quiet, almost empty. The front desk receptionist waved at me as I walked in, and I pretended I was just there for a quick workout. The place had an air of tranquility, too calm for my nerves. I walked past the workout area and made my way toward the locker rooms, glancing over at the trainer's desk where Ryan often sat. But he wasn't there. I stood by the entrance to the men's locker room, heart hammering in my chest, my thoughts racing. I could feel a sense of dread hanging over me. Then I saw them, Jessica and Ryan, walking toward the locker rooms, talking softly. I froze, watching them. Jessica's hand brushed against his arm as she laughed at something he said. The way they looked at each other, it wasn't just friendly. It was too intimate, too comfortable. They stopped at the locker room door, and I saw Jessica leaning close to Ryan. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I saw him nod and open the door, letting her in first. I could feel my blood run cold as I stood there, hidden behind a column, watching. I knew something was happening, but seeing it like this, seeing them together, like a couple, made my stomach drop. I waited for a few minutes, my mind racing, my heart pounding. Then I heard it, the sound of the door creaking open, followed by muffled voices. I barely breathed, trying to stay out of sight. And then, in an instant, the sounds became unmistakable. The locker room door opened wider, and I saw them. Ryan and Jessica, standing in the middle of the room, tangled in each other's arms. It was like time stopped. My heart shattered in my chest as I watched them kiss, her hands roaming all over him. I stood frozen, unable to move, paralyzed by the sight. Ryan's hand slipped under her shirt, and she didn't even pull away. She didn't care that I was standing just a few feet away from them, watching. Then it happened. Ryan pushed her against the lockers, and Jessica kissed him back hungrily, like she was starving for him. She let out a soft moan, and that was when I snapped. I couldn't just stand there anymore. I stormed into the locker room, furious, my hands shaking with rage. What the hell is going on here? I shouted. They both froze, their eyes wide in shock as they pulled apart. Jessica quickly scrambled to cover herself, her face flushing bright red. Ryan stood there looking guilty but not surprised. Jessica's voice shook as she tried to explain. "Nate, I didn't mean for this to happen." I could barely look at her. "You didn't mean for this to happen? Really? You've been sneaking around behind my back with this piece of shit?" Ryan stepped forward, trying to play it cool. "Look, man, I didn't know." Don't you dare. I cut him off, seething with anger. You knew exactly what you were doing. Both of you knew exactly what you were doing. Jessica's eyes were filled with tears, but I didn't care. I was beyond angry. How long, Jessica? How long has this been going on? She tried to look innocent, like it was all a mistake. It's just been a few weeks, Nate. It's not what you think. We didn't mean for it to get this far. Bullshit, I shouted. This has been going on for longer than that. You've been lying to me for weeks, sneaking around, and you think you can just lie your way out of it? You think I'm stupid? She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at Ryan, almost pleading for him to help her out. But he just stood there, silently, not saying a word. The rage in me boiled over, and I couldn't control it anymore. I turned and walked out of the locker room, slamming the door behind me. I could hear Jessica calling after me, but I didn't stop. The gym door slammed behind me with such force it felt like it shook the entire building. My breath was coming in ragged gasps, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what to do with myself. Every step I took felt heavier, like gravity was pulling me down. I was moving on autopilot, my mind racing, but all I could think about was what I had just seen them. Jessica and Ryan, in each other's arms, making love. It was like a slap in the face, a punch to the gut that knocked the wind out of me. I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or just keep walking until I was far away from everything. I ended up back at the house, pacing back and forth in the living room. I couldn't sit down. I couldn't think straight. The truth was unbearable, and yet I couldn't escape it. My wife, the woman I had trusted with everything, had been betraying me all along. How could I have been so blind? How could I have let it go on for so long? When the door opened behind me, I froze. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Jessica stepped into the living room, her eyes puffy and red, like she had been crying. Her shoulders were slumped, but her posture was defensive, like she was bracing for an argument. I didn't speak. I couldn't. The words were stuck in my throat. All I could do was stare at her, waiting for her to say something, anything, that would make this whole nightmare feel like a bad dream. "Nate, please," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. "I know you're upset, but you don't understand." I turned to face her, my fists clenched at my sides. "I understand perfectly. What I don't understand is how you could do this to me. How you could betray me like this with him. With Ryan." She flinched at the mention of Ryan's name, but quickly tried to regain her composure. "It wasn't like that. You don't know everything, Nate. It's complicated." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Complicated? No, Jess, this isn't complicated. You've been lying to me. You've been sneaking around behind my back, meeting up with him, and now I find out you've been having an affair. How is that complicated? She stepped toward me, her hands outstretched, pleading for me to understand. I never meant for it to happen like this. I swear I never meant for things to go this far. Her voice trembled, but I didn't care. The truth was in front of me, laid out in black and white, and nothing she said was going to change that. I could feel the rage building inside me, hot and suffocating. "How long, Jessica? How long have you been sleeping with him? How long have you been lying to me?" Her lips trembled as she opened her mouth, but no words came out. Instead, she just stood there, looking at me like she was trying to find the right way to explain it all. "Answer me, Jess," I yelled, the anger pouring out of me. "How long has this been going on?" 3 months, she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. 3 months, I repeated, shaking my head in disbelief. 3 months of you lying to my face, acting like everything was fine, and all this time you were with him. Behind my back. She started to cry then, tears streaming down her face. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted any of this. I made a mistake. I am sorry, Nate. I'm so sorry." The apology hit me like a slap, but it didn't soften the blow. "Sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this, Jessica. Sorry doesn't erase the lies. Sorry doesn't make this go away." I took a step back, my mind racing. I didn't know how to handle this. I didn't know what to do with the anger, the betrayal, the pain that was crushing me. For a moment, I thought about just leaving, just packing up and walking out without saying another word. But no, she didn't get to have it that easy. She didn't get to just act like it was all a mistake, like we could go back to the way things were. I looked at her one last time. I'm done, Jessica. I'm done with the lies, the cheating, the secrecy. This marriage is over. Her face fell, the color draining from her cheeks. She took a step toward me, her voice breaking as she said, "No, Nate. Please, don't do this. We can fix this. We can go to therapy, we can work on it. I'll do whatever it takes." I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "You think therapy is going to fix this? You think I can just forget what you've done?" "I love you," she said, her voice desperate. "I love you, Nate. Please don't leave me." The words felt hollow now. I didn't believe her anymore. She had betrayed me with someone else, someone who had seen her in ways I never would again. She had given herself to him, and now she wanted me to just forget about it and move on. It was impossible. "I'm filing for divorce," I said, the decision hitting me like a wave. "Tomorrow. I'm done. Don't try to stop me." Her face crumpled, and she collapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. But I didn't feel anything anymore. The anger had subsided, replaced with something colder, a sense of finality. This was it. The next morning, I went to a lawyer. It didn't take long to get everything sorted out. The divorce papers were filed, and just like that, it was over. I didn't care about what she would say or how she would try to spin it. I knew the truth now, and that was all that mattered. The days following the divorce were a blur. The house was quiet. It was just me now, and I couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and anger. Relieved that it was finally over, but angry at how much of my life had been wasted. Jessica had taken everything, my trust, my love, my loyalty, and stomped on it without a second thought. Now, I had to take control of what was left, but I wasn't going to just walk away and let things slide. No, Ryan had been the one to help her betray me. He had been the one who fueled the affair, who pushed her further away from me, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. So I set a plan in motion. The first thing I did was go back to the gym, not for a workout, but to get my revenge. I knew Ryan would be there, probably bragging to the other trainers about his conquest, thinking he had won. But I wasn't going to let him have that satisfaction. I couldn't let him just continue like nothing happened. I showed up at the gym, my hands in my pockets, pretending I was just another guy working out. But I wasn't there for the equipment. I was there for one thing, Ryan. I made sure to catch his eye. He saw me, and his expression shifted. For a moment, he looked confused, like he didn't recognize me. But when he did, when he saw who I was, his face went pale. "Nate," Ryan said, stepping toward me. "What the hell are you doing here?" I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there, staring him down. He looked nervous, but he didn't back away. He was still cocky, still acting like he hadn't just fucked my wife. "I'm here to make sure you don't get away with what you did," I said, my voice cold and steady. "You think you could just go around sleeping with my wife, and there won't be any consequences?" Ryan opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "No, don't try to explain it away. You knew she was married. You knew what you were doing, and now you're going to pay for it." I leaned in closer, my voice dropping to a low growl. "You're done. No more clients. No more business. No one's going to trust you anymore." Ryan's face contorted, his arrogance slipping. "You can't do that. You don't have the power to." "I don't need power," I interrupted. "I just need to tell the truth." I made a few calls, reached out to some people I knew in the fitness industry, and within hours word started spreading. I made sure Ryan's reputation was tarnished beyond repair. I told everyone what he'd done, how he'd crossed the line with his clients, how he'd betrayed someone who had trusted him. And it worked. The gym owners heard about it, and within the next few days, Ryan was fired. His classes were canceled. His clients started leaving. No one wanted to be associated with the guy who had screwed over a loyal husband and destroyed a marriage. I didn't stop there. I made sure Jessica knew exactly what was happening. I wasn't going to let her off easy. I sent her a message, a short, and to the point text. I hope you enjoy being with someone who has no career left because of what you did. Your betrayal cost you both everything. She called me immediately, but I didn't answer. I didn't want to hear her excuses. I didn't want to hear her apologize again. She had made her choice, and now she had to live with the consequences. Over the next few weeks, I watched as everything unraveled for her. Without Ryan's income, she started to struggle. I'm not proud of the satisfaction I felt, but it felt like justice. She deserved it. She deserved to feel the weight of what she had done, even if it was only a fraction of what I had felt. And as for me, I moved on. Slowly but surely, I started rebuilding. I kept my distance from the gym, from the reminders of her and him, and focused on myself. I learned to enjoy my own company again, found new things that made me feel alive. I didn't need Jessica. I didn't need Ryan. I had my pride back. At the end of it all, I realized something important. Sometimes, the people you trust the most will hurt you the deepest. But in the end, it's up to you whether you let them destroy you or whether you stand up, take control, and make them face the consequences. As for Ryan and Jessica, they were both left with nothing. No career, no trust, and no one left to rely on but each other. And I couldn't help but feel a small, twisted sense of satisfaction. They deserved each other,